Welcome to my madness, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be taking a look at my personal top 10 Spider-Man action figures. I can't really say of all time because I don't own every single Spider-Man action figure, but I do own a lot. I have somewhere between 80 and 90 Spider-Man action figures, and this is just my personal opinion on, out of those figures that I own, which ones are my personal top 10. Of course, your mileage may vary. You probably have a very different top 10. And by the way, let me know what that top 10 is down in the comment section down below, because I'd love to see what your arguments are for why those are your favorite figures. But today we're going to be talking about my top 10. So without any further ado, here we go. And in at number 10, we have the Spider-Man Armor Mark 1. I just love this figure. I love the way it looks. I love the simple color scheme, just black and silver. I think this figure was done very, very well. It's got good articulation. The armor looks great. The metallic paint looks really, really good. And I just have really fond memories of Web of Spider-Man number 100, which was the first appearance of this armor. In fact, I believe, if I recall correctly, it was the first appearance of any Spider-Man armor. And I just love the way it looks. I just think this is a fantastic figure. It's just one of my favorites. And I know it's not a traditional look for Spider-Man, but damn, does it look good. And in at number 9, we have the all-new Mezco Spider-Man that was just released here not too long ago. And this may be, in fact, I know it is the newest Spider-Man on my top 10 list. Now, some people say, well, why isn't this higher up on the list? And I mean, look, it still made it in the top 10. I love this figure, and I do think it is the absolute hands-down best representation of a Ditko-era Spider-Man that I've ever seen in action figure form. However, it's not higher up on the list because it does have some downsides. It is a slightly smaller figure. I'm not always the biggest fan of cloth goods, and, you know, this one just, I don't know, there's just something about it that keeps it from being higher up on the list for me. While I love it and it comes with a ton of accessories, it is very expensive, and while it's a great figure and I'm glad to have it in my collection, it's just really hard to put it any higher on the list than where we've got it here. And in at number 8, we have the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man. This is absolutely a phenomenal figure, hands down across the board. Now, some people will get upset that I didn't have this like at number 1 or something, because I know this is a lot of people's absolute favorite Spider-Man figure, and I absolutely get it. Look, the articulation is amazing, the sculpt is amazing, the paint is amazing. In many ways, this is the best Spider-Man figure that Hasbro, or just the Marvel Legends line in general, has ever given us. However, for me, it's not quite Peter Parker. This figure stands just about as tall as most of your Captain America figures. He's very big, very bulky, very ripped, and to me, that's not Peter Parker. Peter Parker is an average-sized dude who's in good shape, but not this much. And that's really the one thing that holds it back for me more than anything else. Great figure, absolutely love it, definitely worthy of being in my top 10, but just not the perfect Spider-Man. And in at number 7, we have Cyborg Spider-Man. This was a retro card release, and I just love this figure. It gives me all the nostalgic feels of that Spider-Man number 21 cover from 1992, where it's just him back-to-back with Deathlock, both of them holding huge guns. I loved that storyline. I loved that look for Spider-Man. I just love this figure. This is just a beautifully perfect representation of Spider-Man at that time, at that era, in that storyline, and I just cannot get enough of this figure. I love it, and I know this is not everybody's flavor of action figure or their preferred look for Spider-Man. Completely get it, but for me, this was in a kind of a golden age era of when I was reading comic books, and this is just so perfectly done to just be that version of Peter Parker. I absolutely love it. In at number 6, we have Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, to me, this is the perfect representation of like a 16-year-old Spider-Man, a 16-year-old Peter Parker putting on the suit, getting out there and fighting bad guys. The size, the sculpt, the overall build, everything on this is so well done. It does lack slightly in articulation for a Spider-Man figure, not for any Marvel Legend, but for a Spider-Man figure, yes, it does. But just everything else about it, the sculpt, the paint, everything just really does it for me. I think this is by far one of the best representations of Peter Parker, specifically a young Peter Parker. I love this figure. It is a little bit harder to get a hold of nowadays. I mean, I got it originally in the Vulture 2-pack. You can get it in some other ways. He does tend to be a little bit pricey. Not too bad, but it's definitely one worth adding to your collection. In at number 5, we have my personal favorite representation of black suited Spider-Man, and that is this Red Hulk Wave Build-A-Figure version. I love this thing, and look, I know, I get it. There have been, in many people's opinions, better versions of a black suited Spider-Man. This is an older figure, ball hips, all kinds of stuff, but there is just something about this sculpt on this guy, and it just screams comic book art to me. Just the angularness of the musculature and everything, and then the light blue highlighting over the black to make it pop as if it was on a comic book page. I get all the downsides to an older figure like this, but there is just something about this figure that to this day has kept it not only one of my favorite Spider-Man figures, but hands down my favorite symbiote Spider-Man look. In at number 4, we have the original PS4 Spidey, the GameStop exclusive that came out several years ago. I adore this figure. It is arguably one of the best Spider-Man figures ever. I think the sculpt and the paintwork and deco on this thing are just above reproach. I know they did a re-release recently, but that figure's just not anywhere near as good as this one. It does technically have better articulation, but this figure, as it originally came out, is so good that I can put the articulation being slightly lesser than the new one aside completely, because this, in just about every other way, is just so much of a better figure and just so much of a better look for Spider-Man, for Peter Parker. I got this figure brand new at GameStop years ago, and to this day, I can't be happier that I did. So in at number 3, we have the old Toy Biz Spider-Man Classics Superposable Spider-Man. Now, they released this buck several times over the course of a couple years, I think between 2002 to 2004, if I remember correctly. Came with some different decos and things like that. The one that I've got here comes with the darker deco with the kind of dry brush to lighter tones on it. He's also got the yellow translucent Spidey Sense eyes, and they're all good figures, okay? I just love this figure. I can't explain it. I know a lot of people, when they go back to like Spider-Man Classics, days of Spider-Man, they talk about the McFarlane version of Spider-Man. To me, this is a far better version of Spider-Man than the McFarlane version with the ball joint hips and everything. This is just a better looking figure across the board. It's still, to this day, for me, one of the best looking Spider-Man figures that I have ever seen. I just love it. It's just a perfect, for me, look for Peter Parker as being kind of the skinny guy who's very acrobatic. I just love it. All right, now in at number 2, this should come as no surprise that this was going to be on the list pretty high up, because in many of my videos I have said this Mafex 185 Spider-Man is, in my opinion, probably the greatest classic Spider-Man figure we have ever gotten. I mean, just period, end of story, hands down. Obviously, this is at number 2, so it doesn't mean it's my favorite, but I think this is certainly the best. If you can only have one Spider-Man in your collection, it should be this one right here. It is phenomenal in every way. Paint, sculpt, articulation, deco, accessories, everything across the board. It is about the most perfect Spider-Man figure you can possibly have, and I absolutely stand by that. And as I said, absolutely recommend this should be on your shelf. And here we are, guys. In at number 1, we have the Spider-Man classics from the Toy Biz era, Cyber Spider-Man. Guys, I can't tell you what it is about this thing, and I am pretty much a Spider-Man purist, but I just love this thing. I mean, absolutely hands down. The sculpt work and paint work on this thing are absolutely phenomenal in every single way. It is such a unique look and take on Spider-Man, and it was done so perfectly by Toy Biz that, to me, there's just never been a Spider-Man figure that's been done this well. And for my number 1 to not be in the traditional red and blue should really tell you something. That is how good this figure is. This was one of my grails for a really long time. I finally got a hold of it, and damn, am I glad I did, because hands down, without a doubt, this is my absolute favorite Spider-Man figure. Well, that is it, guys. There are my top 10 Spider-Man figures, pretty much of all time, certainly out of my collection. And I would love, as I said at the beginning of this video, to hear what your favorite Spider-Man figures are. Leave that in the comments section down below. Spider-Man is pretty much my favorite comic book character of all time. And I love this character. I love what he represents. I love that he is kind of the everyman, and I think that is what made Spider-Man such a popular character for the last 60 years or so, is because he was the nerdy guy that you could relate to, who didn't have everything go right in his life, who wasn't popular, and there was just something about this character that I think appealed to something in everyone, and I just can't get enough Spider-Man, as you guys can see. And this, I think, is a good representation of my taste when it comes to Spider-Man action figures. So that is it, guys. Thank you for watching. I always do appreciate it. And always remember to enjoy your collection.